this is what we worked on. Right, we basically just set some keyframes. Anyone remember what we set keyframes on? Well, what attribute? Rotation, yep. So that's what we did. Anything in After Effects can be animated. So things like position, scale, even the anchor point can be animated. Transparency can be animated. After Effects doesn't call it transparency, they call it opacity. However, if you look at your hotkey sheet, what is the hotkey in the layers for opacity? T for transparency, right? Yes. So remember that, because that's an easy way to remember it. Everything else is the letter. A for anchor point, P for position, S for scale, and so on. I'm going to go over how to animate a title card. So I'm going to show you a couple examples. We'll walk through one of these examples together where we actually set some basic keyframes. And then you'll be able to go through and then take your sketch that you did and start animating that. Don't think that these are going to be super fantastic. Our skills are not there yet to add all the super fantastic stuff to it. So these are going to be very basic, just animating positions, rotations, and scales and that kind of thing up, okay? So here's an example of one. Let me go to 5 seconds. Oh, no, sorry, that's the other one. There it is. Okay, super simple. Everything either positions in, or rotates in, or scales in, or something like that. Yep. And everything is actually just position and rotation. I didn't actually, what did I scale? Oh, the title and the 0. Yep. So that's one example. Here's another example. Yes, we want to keep them simple for the first ones, just because we don't have, like I said, everything. Yeah, whatever. Ignore the font. Apparently my font is not loading, so. Right, so this one's fancier. Everything was lined up. The title card where the one 0001 was all lined up. Okay, after we do our first assignment, this one, you won't be there yet. After we do our second assignment, you'll have a better idea of how to do this kind of stuff. So if you want to go back to your title card and fancy it up some, you definitely can and should do that, okay? Our first one is just for us to get something out so that we have a title card to go by. Something to pay attention with this one compared to the other one is there's a lot of little things inside it. Like, first we'll see the texture. There's a bit of a texture on top of this, so it's not just a flat color. Also, as this comes out, you can see the little streaks of lines here. You could also see these little circly blip things. Okay, those are just added on top of it. All right, so that's the one that I'm going to use. Okay. So the first thing you do is you start off with just the design of it. So if you were able to get to School of Motion stuff, you started watching their stuff, even the ones we watched in class, you'll see that they went through this, which is the first step is just to kind of like block out what does the design look like, right? So before I do any animation at all, I have some idea. Over here on the side, I've done some sketches. So those are 4 of them from my book that I just kind of like threw up there. When I did this one, same kind of thing. I had a sketch that I did, and I'm like, okay, really simple, MACA, or title card 01, Sean Sarcona, MACA 1900. Okay, there's no animation on this. Then what I do is I basically reverse engineer it. I say, okay, now that I have this stuff, how do I want each one of these pieces to come into the scene? So title card, I'm like, it's in the middle. I'm going to just scale it up. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I animated the scale of those. This stuff here, I have the MACA falling in, and then it does this like rotation thing where it comes up and slaps down, and when it slaps down, the 1900 kind of like falls out of it. and then the Sean Sarcona area, Sean comes in first, and then the Sarcona comes in, and then the Sean like moves on top of it, okay? So that was my thought process going into the next stage, which was the animation part. So here, oh, sorry, and then the background just drops down. Okay, so let's look at one of these at a time. So here you can see the Sean coming in, and then here comes the Sarcona, and then Sean just kind of moves out of the way and then on top of it. Okay, so that was simple enough. And then let's look at this one. So here comes MACA, just slides straight down, comes up, smacks down, and the 1900 just comes out of it. And then here's title card, and then title card scales, and then 0-1 scales. Now notice on this one when it comes up, I'm going to go frame by frame so you can see it better. So it comes up, What do you notice about it? Right. So it gets bigger first and then gets smaller, right? So we kind of do an overshoot and then come to it. And what that does is it gives it a bit more feel to it versus, boom, just smacking right into the center of the screen, okay? So you'll find that a lot of the little details that you add to your stuff is really going to be what pulls off this whole thing. The hardest thing that people find when animating something is trying to get things to animate the order that they want things to animate in, okay? For instance, like on this one, you can't see it. How many keyframes do you think I have on the word Sean? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4. Actually, I do have 5. I had 5 because I needed the little bip there. But yes, I have 5 keyframes. I could have got away with 4, but I did it with 5. Because every time it moves, I have to set start points and end points. So there's one keyframe right here on the left side for it to be off screen. Then there's a keyframe for it to be on screen. Then it has to wait. Right there, it's waiting, so there's another keyframe. And then once that comes in, then another keyframe to go up, and then another keyframe to come down. Okay? 2, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes. And then the same thing here at the end. When they go off screen, they don't just all fall down. They go up a little bit first, and then fall down. And again, it gives a little bit more fanciness to it versus just kind of, you know, just falling straight down. Okay? So anytime we do a title sequence like this, we want to start with a blank screen, bring stuff onto the screen, and then at the end of it, make sure everything is gone. Okay? That way, any pieces that we add won't have any overlaps or jumps or weird like cuts to them. All right. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to use one of these and start it basically from scratch-ish. Okay? So I'm going to make a new composition. Think of your compositions like pages. Okay? So just like you would use Illustrator or InDesign or whatever, it's a new page, it's a new layer or a new file or whatever. This composition is something that I can make basically from scratch. I can add it to stuff if I need to or take it away or whatever. So I'm going to call this title card 002 or 3. 960 by 540, 30 frames per second. Our end duration will be 5 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to look at one of these and try to find one that is simple enough. Each one of these has something different to it. So I'm actually going to do, I'll do this one here. I'll do that one, okay? And then we'll do the top one together, just so you can see how we do the top one together. So the first thing I want to do is I want to draw out what that's going to look like. I need a background, so I'm going to drop in a solid. That way I have one solid color for the background. We can change all the colors later, so don't worry about, you know, don't spend an hour trying to pick your favorite color. Just grab a color, throw it on the screen, then you can start adjusting stuff. That circle that's in the center, I'm going to use a shape layer for that. So I'm going to go to Ellipse. If I start to draw right now with this layer selected, it will create a mask that's different than a shape layer. Basically, it's going to make a cutout of my solid. So I'm going to deselect, then draw my circle holding down Shift and holding down Control so it comes from sort of the center. So that looks like a good size. All right. Now, as I'm drawing this out, I'm also kind of planning out how I want to actually animate it, okay? So my vision here is that with this, the line would come straight up, and then the ball would just kind of like go bloop, like that, okay, once it got to the top. So with that, I could do it a couple ways. I'm going to show one way for that, and I'll show another way for the other lines. So I'm going to make another solid. Instead of the width being 960 though, I'm going to make the width as thin as I want that line to be. So let's say 10 pixels. And then for the height, I'll go halfway, so 270. And then I'll make it a different color so that it matches better. There we go. Okay. So now I have this line coming straight up, so it's going to basically scale up. When it gets to the top, then the ball will scale up and do its thing, okay? Then I have those lines coming out from the side. These ones, I want to grow. So I don't want them to just be like scaled up because that'll look weird, because it's kind of like on this like angle like this. What I want to do is I want it to start like I'm just drawing it. So I want it to start here and then go doot, like that, okay? So to do that, I'm going to use my pen tool, okay? And just like the shape tool, I'm going to make sure I have nothing selected, then I'm going to draw with my pen tool. The pen tool creates shape layers, so we can do different things with them. So I'm just going to click, I'm going to hold down Shift, so I get a 45, hold down Shift so it goes straight, and there we go. I'm going to take the fill off of this. I'm going to take the stroke and pull it up. There we go. So that one's good. And the other side's going to be the same thing, so I probably could just duplicate this, move it over, switch back to my pen tool, which is the hotkey of G, remember? That horrible hotkey. And then just slide that over here. Oops. Slide that over there. The pen tool is definitely different. You really have to just get used to it. There's no way around that. No. It'd be nice, right? It'd be really nice. All right. So I just drew those two. They didn't come in with any strokes or fills, so I'm just going to add that afterwards. There we go. Okay. And then I want my shape here to be on top. And then I'm going to start labeling these. Circle, top left line, top right line, bottom left line, bottom right line. And then this is the line up. And then this is background. So I'm just hitting enter and just renaming each one of those. Okay. So now that I have my basic design of the shapes, I'm going to start adding my text in here. The reason you want to do all of this stuff first is because it's very easy to do something like this. Start animating things like, okay, this is turning out cool. You go to throw the text in there, and then your text is like too small or too big or too squished or something. So it's always best, like I said, to get it all out there right away. You don't need to put your first and last name. If you want to just put your last name, I'm cool with that too, okay? Especially if it just fits better. When you pick your fonts, try to pick one font family and use that one font family for the entire thing. Or you can pick like a, let me jump back to this one. Oops. So I used a serif font for these ones here. So my name, Sean Sarcona, is in a serif font. You can see the little curves and stuff. Over here too, this is also a serif font. This, big and bold, I used a sans serif font, just blocky text, okay? So with something like this, everything's kind of at the same level. I'm just going to leave everything the same kind of font. And try to keep it thick enough that it doesn't squish your stuff. There we go, so that. When you get more comfortable with it, you can really deal with stuff like kerning and leading and all that. That's fine there. Yeah. And then this. And I'm fine with these being at different levels too, so maybe I'll pull this one down. And then this will be... And then you could put MACA 1900, or you can just put 1900. We'll know what it is, okay? I wouldn't want each of these to fit perfectly. So like this one being huge, my name being small, that might look kind of weird. I may, just want to leave it at that size and maybe just kind of shrink the line some. You'll see where hotkeys are coming in because I haven't really gone up to the toolbar. I've used a lot of just hotkeys to get this. There we go. I could have also put MACA on the top and 1900 on the bottom, right? I could have done that. That works. I just want to duplicate this. I like to duplicate the text because it just makes it easier to kind of make sure everything's lined up right. So this will be assignment 01. The reason I put 01, that way I kind of have an idea of when I do 10 or 11 or 12, how big it's going to be. I'm never going to get to 100, so 2 digits is good. And again, I'm going to take this bottom left line and shrink that in. And then I'll duplicate this. I think I want this to come down a bit further. Now this will be a tricky one because if I were just to put in here title, there we go, title card, you can see that this doesn't fit perfectly, right? So then I have to adjust the size of this. But what I... Same thing would happen with the other assignments, right? With the other assignments, right. So what I want to do is I want to figure out how big my biggest one is and kind of base it off of that. And if that line has to get smaller or bigger or whatever, I can do that. That's not a huge deal. But I want to, just so for testing out purposes, I want to see what it's going to look like with the biggest one. So if I find 1900, which is there, I go to the end of this thing. So we have page transitions. I believe that's the biggest one that we have. Okay. So just to test it out, again, the hotkey is Control-T, another messed up one, page transitions. And what I'm testing here is that that doesn't happen, right? Because now it's off screen, and this is going to basically change my entire design because all of this is like shifted over. So I may want to, yeah, change the font size, move this over, a lot of different things that I can do to get that lined up. We also never want to get too close to the edge with our text in case the screen cuts it off or something, okay? I think I will shrink the font size though to maybe like 42. There we go. And then another thing to consider is, you know, when you have these letters like the G where it drops down into the line, what kind of contrast do I want to deal with? Do I, you know, want to make this like that? Is that going to change how things are laid out? Do I want to keep it like this? And then do, where's my, there it is. If I want to do small caps, I think that would probably be best for something like this. All right. So that seems like that fits pretty good right there. That's my biggest one. And then the other thing I want to do, everything on this page here is going to be pretty much locked in, except for the assignment number and the assignment name. Those two things will change every assignment that we do. So whenever I type a new one, watch what happens to the text. Title card. What do you notice about where it typed? it's centered, right? So it makes more sense if it's left justified and everything's lined up with the left side of it. So I'm going to go to my paragraph and say left justified, then slide it over. Now when I get to another one, see how it just types right from that side. Much easier. Okay. All right, so cool, that worked. Maybe I'll make these bold. And I'll make all of them, oops, that works there. And this is 9. I think I want to make sure that all of these lines are the same width, which they're not. So 6 looks good. Okay, just double checking the size of things. That's probably good there. This line needs to be a bit bigger. Once you're comfortable with After Effects, it's not a huge deal to change this stuff. It's just right now, because you're still new to it, it's best to get it all out of the way first. Bottom right line. All right. Good enough for our example, okay? I need to to center this. This is definitely not centered. So I'm going to open up the circles, little triangle here. All the stuff on the side has these triangles. You can open this up and expand and expand and expand and get to all the attributes that are inside it. So I'm going to open up the circle where the contents are, where the ellipse is, where the transform is, and you'll see the position of it is at a weird number. It's like -4, -14. When I drew it, I tried to get right in the center of my document, but I was that far off. So what I'm going to do is just reset this to 0 and 0. Now it's perfectly centered. Okay, it still looks good enough for this. Now we can continue on. All right. I have an empty text layer. I'll delete that. Save my work. Okay. And then I also want to increment and save. In case I screw up, I want to have a spot to come back to. No animation, just flat. Cool. So now I can start animating it. So I think of each piece as its own little animation, okay? So I'm not worried about the entire animation as a whole yet. I'm only focused on one little piece at a time. So the little stick that goes into the circle, I want that just to scale up. That's all I'm concerned about at the moment, just scaling that up. So I'm going to go over here. If I check the scale out, there's 2 numbers, right? There's this number and the other number. If I click and drag them, what happens? Right, they're both going up and down. So the thickness of it and the height of it is also getting bigger. I don't want that to happen. So just like every program you've seen with Adobe, there's a little chain. You unclick the chain. And then I can use the Y to scale it down. So do I want to scale from this direction? Or should I have it scale from the bottom and come straight up? Right. That's going to look best. Right. So we're going to adjust the anchor point. So we hit Y. We scoot the anchor point down. I don't need to snap it, but I'm going to snap it using the control key. All right. So I'm at 0 in here. I'm going to reset this to 0. I say I'm going to set keyframes. I scoot up a little bit. I move this up. And I want this to be at least at the center of that. So I'm going to keep doing this until it's at about the center. There we go. And then I can rewind it, hit play. There we go. Okay, so that's, a couple keyframes. So is that good enough for any keyframes that we set? It's good enough, but not good enough for this class. Every keyframes we set, we want to do easy ease on. Okay, remember that when we had the box? Regular, it was just like linear, it was just sliding over. Everything that we do should have easy ease on it. So there is some change in speed. It makes things more interesting. So envision what this is going to look like. ignore everything else on the screen, just picture this line. Right now it's just going at a constant speed straight up. What we could do is have it go fast and then slow down at the top, or we can have it go slow and then shoot up at the top, okay? I think having it go slow and then hit the top, like, because that's what's going to cause the bubble to get bigger, I think that might be the best way to do it. So let's go slow first and then really fast, okay? So I'm going to hit F9. I can't hit F9 though because my other software has that hotkey. So I'm just going to right click on the keys, say easy ease. These turn to hourglasses. Then I go on my graph. I make sure I'm working with my speed graph. And then I'm going to push the animation to the right side. Okay, now what that does is it makes sure that all the speed happens at the end of those keyframes. Okay, so what should happen is it should go slow and then pick up speed right at the end. So now we'll see. There we go. I'm going to squeeze these together. I think it's probably a little bit too slow. There we go. Cool. All right, so that's working. So that piece is done. Then I'm going to go to my circle and do that. I don't need to worry about where in the timeline this is going to happen. I'm just going to do it right at the beginning and get the circle to look like it's getting bigger. Okay, so I'm going to go to my scale. I'm going to test it out. It looks like it's scaling from the center. Everything's cool. I don't need to adjust any pivots. So I'm going to put this at 0, make sure I'm at the beginning, set a keyframe. Scoot up a bit. Set this at 100. Not 1,000, 100. There we go. All right. So there it is. Okay. Are the keyframes good? No. Easy ease, yep. So now we have to, again, consider what kind of animation is going to happen. The stick makes sense going slow and then fast. That way it's kind of like a punch or something where it like hits it and then this thing like pops out. So how should the ball animate? Fast first or fast at the end? Fast first, right? Because there's an impact. I want to emphasize that impact. So I'm going to go to my graph editor, and I'm going to slide these over to that side. Oops. Fast first. There we go. Cool. All right. This could probably go a little bit faster, so I'm squeezing those keyframes together a little bit further. Okay. So this is why we don't care about like syncing up right now the line and the circle. I'm not concerned about that right now, okay, or while I'm doing the initial animation. Once the circle's done, this is how easy it is to get the circle and the line to line up correctly. If I slide the timeline over, I wait for the line to be at about where the line's going to be at the top of it. Then I take the circle's layer and I just slide it over. Now I can control when that happens, okay? And I'm also going to use my N key. Remember, that's your work area. Yeah, we just said the N, not end. And then remember I said too, try to go like a frame and see if that makes a difference. Yeah, that one looks a little bit better. Cool. All right. So that's that one. It looks fine, but I want to do that little thing where it gets too big and then comes back down to scale, right? Because it'll make it feel a little bit more elastic, a little bit more bouncy. So I'm going to hit S to get back to my scale. The way that I do that, I can see where the start of my keyframes are. I can see where the end of my keyframes are. So what I do is I go like a keyframe before it or a frame before it, and I just make this bigger than 100. So it's 114. So now, it's really simple. As long as you set your start, you set your end, and then you go between them once it's all set, and you just make it bigger, it works, okay? Bloop. Cool. All right, so that's that. Now the lines. The lines are going to be differently done because of how I want to animate them. Like I said, I want them to look like they're kind of like drawn on, not just like scaled up, okay? Just so you can see how stupid the scale is going to look, I'm going to put my pivot here, and then I'm going to scale this. So see how that looks kind of silly coming out like that? It'd be much better if it was just kind of like drawn in. So that's what we're going to do. Like I said, you can open up these little arrows to expand this. The shape layers will have two areas. They'll have a contents, which is this, and then they'll have the transform, which is that. Any of the layers that are just a solid, like the background or the line, will just have the transform, okay? So I'm going to go to where the line is here. I'm going to go to the contents, and on the right of that, it has this add. And one of the things you can do with this add is add all this kind of like fancy stuff. We're not going to hit on all of them, but we're going to hit on this one, which is trim paths. That's going to allow us to draw that path in there, okay? So now I get a contents, I get a trim path. I'm going to open it up, and there's a start and an end. So basically this is like the start of that line and the end of the line. So if I wanted to animate it either way, I could do that. So I test it out. So I'm going to click and drag on start, and it does that. Okay, that's not what I want to do. I'm going to click and drag on end. That's what I want it to do. I want it to go bloop like that. Okay, so I'm going to animate, instead of scale or position or rotate, I'm going to animate end. So I will click end. I will scoot up some frames. I will put this back at 100 and then test it out. All right, that looks good. And then easy ease again. If you want to test things out, like all my keyframes so far have been like 0 and 7 frames. Those are my 2 keyframes. Try going bigger, try going smaller, seeing what you like. Like that may be too slow compared with the rest of the size that everything else is happening. Okay, I liked it when it was probably about 10 or even less. Sometimes After Effects will do this where it jumped out of this box and now my work area wasn't working. There we go. Okay, so that's good. So I'm going to hit U to close that window. And actually, let me open this up again. I'm going to copy this trim path. I'm going to make sure I'm rewound. And I'm going to just paste that on all 4 of the other ones, or all 3 of the other ones. Okay? So you can take any effect, any keyframes, you can copy them from one to the other. It is, right? So now I don't have to do that again. I just hit play, and they all work. Okay? So now I want to take each one of those lines and offset them so they make sense. So the line comes up, the bubble happens, and then each one of these lines is going to come out. So I don't want them to be all at the same time because that's boring. I want it to be kind of offset, okay? So I know where the circle happens. It happens right about there. So now I'm going to take each one of these lines, pull them down to about where that should start, and then just give them a couple frames offset. Like that. So now we'll see what we have. See, it's a lot more interesting that way versus if I have all of these perfectly lined up. So they all come out at the same time, that's kind of boring. A little bit of offset. Cool. All right. So now I need to figure out a way to get my text on there. I could slide the text in from the sides, right, or the top ones from the top, however I want to do that. What I'm going to do is have them just reveal. So the line comes out and the text will just reveal itself, okay? A couple ways to do it. I'm going to do it the way that you should do it versus the way that's, I don't know, less layers, I guess. I'm going to go to a shape layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box. So I have nothing else selected. I'm just drawing a box where I want my name to be, right there. Okay, so I want my name in that box, basically. I'll give this a color so we can see it. There we go. So what's going to happen is this box is going to be like a layer mask. So when our text goes into the box, it'll actually reveal the text. When it's out of the box, it'll be invisible, okay? So I need to make sure that this shape layer, and I'm going to call this Sarcona Mask, is right above Sarcona. Then I'm going to go to my name Sarcona. I'm going to make sure that my switches down at the bottom here are toggled so that I can see this one that says Track Mat. That's that center one. And I'm going to say, Sarcona, you will be an alpha matte Sarcona mask. Crazy long word. Basically, it means wherever the box exists, the text will be in the box. Okay. The one that's below it means wherever the box is, the text isn't. Meaning that basically I could have the text slide out of the box to reveal, or have it slide into the box to reveal. This way I'm having it slide into the box to reveal. The reason you may use the other one, I may have one piece of text going in the box, one piece of text coming out of the box. Okay, so that may be the reason you would use the other one. All right, so now it looks exactly the same as it did before, but now what I can do is hit P to go to my position, and I'm going to animate my name sliding upward. Okay, so right now it's on top of the line. I'm going to animate it going right where it's at. Whenever you have something in the correct spot, like this is right now, you typically don't want to animate it from the start, meaning I don't want to have to pull this down first. See how it disappears? And then animate it coming up. It's already in the right spot, so if I set my end keyframe first and then my start keyframe last, then that makes it easier. So I'm going to go to frame 7-ish, set my keyframe, go to the beginning, and then slide it straight down. Okay? So remember, we can't see it right now, but that box is what's making it visible. So there it comes. All right, and then same thing as before. We go to our easy ease. What about this one? Where should the speed happen? Yeah. Something like this isn't terribly reliant on the rest of it, so you really could do either way. You could have it kind of slowly pop up, but I think fast first would be probably in this case, the best situation. You could also do this, where if you squeeze both sides, it's kind of like slow on both ends and really fast right in the middle. If you're not sure, it took me a second to do that, right? Right, test it. See which way looks best. Takes me a second more to undo it though, apparently. Oops. And then make sure you don't move these up from that bottom line. There we go, cool. All right. All right, so that works. And now I'm going to do the same thing on these other ones. So I'll go over to my 1900. I'll draw a box where I want the 1900 to be. Oops, called box. Very important to label everything because it gets very complicated very quick if you don't. I make sure my 1900 layer is selected. I go to my track mat and I say alpha mat blah blah blah. There we go. So now I just go to the position, set my end keyframe first, rewind it, set the start keyframe. Set them both to easy ease. Slide it over. There we go, good. And then the same thing on these other ones here. Number mask, there we go. That's there. I'll make this an alpha mat. Go to my position, set my end keyframe. Once you're comfortable doing this kind of stuff, you really can kind of attack everything at once. I could have drew each one of my masks, individually, put them in the right spots, set all my keyframes at the same time, and gone back. I'm showing it one at a time just so it's kind of easier to see and repetitive. This. And I'm going to trust that that one works. All right, so now for a title card, I'm going to draw another shape. remember the name could get bigger, so I want to make sure that this box is pretty huge. So I want to make it, it doesn't hurt to go that far, so I'm going to go that far. Assignment name mask, make sure it's on top of that one. Make sure that's set to that. Set my end keyframe, set my start keyframe. Cool. All right, so now everything is animated, except the background. We'll get that. Okay, so now I'm going to go through here and then just try to line up, like here's Sarcona, the line for Sarcona is done. So then I'm going to grab Sarcona here and its mask and just slide them down. And then 1900 is done, so I'm going to grab 1900 here, slide it down, grab assignment 1. That'll probably happen about there. And the assignment name will probably happen about there. Nice. Cool. All right, so that works. I should probably save at some point. All right, so the last thing I need to animate is the background coming in somehow. So I'm going to just animate this position. And I usually like to animate it doing the opposite of the next thing that's coming out. Bless you. So I have that line coming up, so I'm going to animate the box coming down, that way the line comes up, okay? So it goes like that. And then, whoops, no, not rename. Easy ease. This one's speed should be at the end of it. There we go. And now all I'm going to do is take all the layers except for background and just scoot it over just to give background its time to come in before other stuff happens. There we go. So the background comes in, the line goes up, it does its stuff. Cool. So that looks good. All right, so that animation, if we look at where the last thing pops up, I'm at about 1 second and 12 frames. That's how long that took, okay? We have 5 seconds for this, so we don't want it to just come up and then go away right away. We want it to come up, the viewer can process it for 2 seconds, and then it goes away, okay? So I'm going to go up to 3 seconds, 3:15-ish. And now I have to figure out a way to take it all away, okay? The simple way to do it, I just animate everything at the start and then have it all fall down. That's the simplest way to animate the stuff just coming off the screen. More complicated, I could animate everything going backwards. So I could take all my keyframes I just did and just animate everything kind of like going back into the original thing and then falling back down. If I wanted to do that, this is how simple it is. Here's the keyframes. Remember, we can copy and paste them. And then I can right-click, go to Keyframe Assistant, and say Time Reverse. And what that will do is it'll take those 2 keyframes, okay? Here was frame 1, here was frame 2, so 1, 2. When I copied and pasted it, it did 1, 2 again. So it looked like this. It would come up, okay, just focus on title card. It would come up, and then it's slowly going back down because it's going from here to here, then slowly dripping back down to that other keyframe. And then when it gets to that keyframe, it's going to pop back up. If I reverse them, it'll basically keep it up the entire time until we get to the end, and then it'll slide it down. So you see here, stays up, 1, 2, and then goes back down, okay? So if I copy the keyframes, paste the keyframes, time reverse them, then it becomes much easier. And then just so you can see also, I can open up multiple ones at the same time. Oops, grab all of these, reverse them, and now they'll all do the same thing. And then there's my lines. I also want to put these, no, I want that to be there, never mind. These are all the same exact keyframes, so I can actually paste. Oops. All of those right there. And then I time reverse them. And then I go to my circle, I scaled this, I copy its keyframes, paste them, time reverse. I have that extra keyframe in the middle, I don't want that. Maybe I do, we'll see, I guess. We'll see. Line up, same thing. And then background. Cool. So now everything should reverse right in these couple frames. Everything just goes away. Okay. So then what I'm going to do, because everything is lined up perfectly, that doesn't make sense. I want to offset all of these. So all the titles go first. That's what's up here. Then I have the lines, which are down here. Those should go next, so I'm just going to scoot them over. Then after the lines, the circle should go. So I'm just moving the keyframes over. After the circle, then the line should go, and after the line, then the background should go. There we go. So now we have a progression of this kind of like going into the center and going away. Oops. My work area is not long enough. That's why we keep seeing that weird spot. There we go. Cool. There we go. So there's a title card. Okay. Now when we come in for assignment 1, that's going to be assignment 1's assignment. So there's no really an assignment for this one like that we would put after it. Our other assignments, we're going to do page transitions as our next one. So we'll have our title card, it'll say page transitions assignment 2, and then it'll go into page transitions. So we'll actually have a title card and then the assignment right after it. So when we get to that, all we have to do is change this. Page transitions. Yes. 0, 2. And all of our animation goes with it. Even when I fix this so that goes the length of this.
Is there a way that we can do it so that instead of the black background, it transitions into the assignment?
It will, yeah. The black background will actually be transparent. So when you have your other assignment right behind it, this will reveal it basically. So when it goes, your assignment will be right behind it.
So you just want to leave a little bit of a gap where it's black at the beginning
Yep.
before it picks up.
Yeah, right at the beginning. Yep, and you'll see like I'm under 5 seconds by 10 frames. Okay? So these are going to happen pretty quick. All right, so now we're going to do another one of these together. We're going to do a simpler one together. I wanted you to see this, a more complex example. Even on top of this, you could add other little things on top of it, like those little blip type things. So if you haven't started After Effects, start After Effects. We're going to make this one here. Cool. We have After Effects open. Open up your last file that you had from last class, And we're just going to piggyback off of that one. We'll just make a new composition right inside it.
So go under recent?
You can't go into recent because you probably don't have it there. You have to go to open and then go find your file.
Under template?
So what we're going to do is we have to make a new composition. We want to name everything, obviously, so we don't get confused. So composition new. And you can call this one title card together if you want. That way you know it's the one we did together and not the one that you're specifically going to do. What is your width? Remember you have your cheat card, your cheat sheet? 960 by 540. Excellent. Bless you. So type in 960 by 540. What's your frame rate? 30. And then what is our duration?
5 seconds.
Yep. So 500 for duration. Okay, so typically when you come into this, those are the 3 things you're gonna, or 4 things you're gonna change. Give it a name, width and height, frame rate, and your duration. On your own laptop, it'll remember a lot of these settings, but every day you come in here, the system's reset, they go back to default settings, so it'll be whatever the defaults were, okay? 960 by 540, 30 frames per second, and then for our duration, typically like 5 seconds for these initial ones, okay? Cool? All right. You think you did it right? All right. Hit OK. So before we do any kind of layouts or anything, we want to just double check and make sure that everything is still at the right settings. Usually when I tell people 5 seconds, most people got it. 500, 5 seconds. Sometimes it happens that you've typed in 5 or you typed in 5,000 and it's like a ridiculous amount. So if you look at your timeline, you should see something here that says 00:15F, something like that. 1:00, 1:15, 2:00, stuff like that. Does anyone see any like different kinds of crazy numbers? Right. You may see those. Let me see. Yeah, that's fine. Yep. So it's just how yours is displaying. Yours says 1020. Okay. Yeah, we're good still. I guess because my resolution is different, it's going to 15 frames instead of 1020. But we're still good. The idea here is that we don't see, like some people will see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as in 5 frames. And they try to animate something and they think that 1 frame is 1 second, and it doesn't work like that. Okay, cool. So we're going to do this blocky one. So all of these here, you can do those as a solid that you've resized, or you can do them as shapes. It's easier to do a solid because if you know the height of this, what is the height of this? 540. And how many blocks do we have? 3, right? So you can kind of figure out, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you can kind of figure out what that would be. If you're not good at math, it is an even number, it's 180. Right. If it wasn't an even number, just round up. 182, 181, whatever. Okay, so I can make 3 solids that are 960 in width by 180 in height, and those will be the exact same size that I would need. If you do shapes, you definitely could get them sized and whatever. This is the easiest, most accurate way to do it. So I'm going to go to Layer, New Solid, or hit Control Y. Okay. We will name it, yes. So let's call this background 01. So I'm calling it background 01. For the height, or the width, you'll punch in 960. For the height, we'll punch in 180. 180. Okay? everything else should be good. You can pick a color. Remember, you can change this. I'm not concerned about it. This is more of an animation than a customizing exercise, okay? So just pick a random color to start with. I'm going to go with green this time because you might be getting sick of seeing blue every time I do these. Okay, so now I have one right in the middle. So I need to duplicate it. So what am I going to do to duplicate it? Control C, Control V would work, right? Copy, paste. Or Control D if we want to save the finger strokes. So I just do Control D, and that duplicates it. How many copies do I need? Three. So I'm just going to duplicate it twice.
So hit Control D twice.
Correct. And then just move each one of those to fill our area. What do you mean? I just selected it with the regular selection tool and then just click and drag. Nope, it doesn't matter which one. And then I hold Shift so it goes straight up and down. Now, like I said before, it's not a huge deal if you don't get it perfectly in the right spot right away. You can always adjust it. The hardest thing comes in when you try to animate something and it's off. I'll remember where that is. Oops, passed it up. If you animate something going from one point to another, that's pretty much just a straight shot. Start point, end point. What happens is when we're not on with one of our points, if I held Shift and this goes in a straight line, that's perfect. Everything works out great. But if I don't and I end up with this like wonky line, then this thing's going to animate kind of like on a weird angle, okay? So before you do any animating, yes, definitely make sure on yours that it's perfectly lined up or perfectly lined up, okay? So it should be good enough for where we're at. If you really want to be like exact about it, some people are like that much exact. So this is 180, right? What's half of 180? 90, right? So my first one, if I look at the position for it, is at 90, 480 and 90. You don't have to be. I'm just letting you know this is how you could do it. The next one will be 180 plus 90. Is that right? Yes. There it is. So 180 plus 90, which is 270. I hit P. Yep, I just selected all three and then hit P. Just Control A. Oops. Okay, and then the last one should be at 450. So you'll see on mine, I'm 2 pixels off on the last one, 450. There we go. Okay, so 90, 270, and 450 are those 3 numbers. Okay, and I put them in order of top to bottom. It doesn't have to be that accurate for this kind of thing, but it's something to be aware of because you may want to do that. If you are, is anyone here in programming or done programming before? No? Okay. A little bit? Once upon a time. Okay, yeah. If you got into JavaScript, JavaScript is actually like, you can write scripts for After Effects in JavaScript. And so one of those things might be, I have these stripes that I want to create, and let's say I have 5 of them or 10 of them or whatever, I would use these kinds of numbers and this kind of math to kind of figure that stuff out. So that interests me. Obviously it doesn't interest you guys. Yes, sir.
When I try typing each number in,
Mm-hmm.
just give me the same number for each.
Right, well, you just do the one, and then you do the next one, and then the next one. There you go. Okay, so there is some formula to this that makes everything kind of happier, all right? I'm going to give the other boxes different colors. So I don't like everything to be the same color. I like to have some contrast here. So I'm going to go to my top box and change the color of the layer. So on your hotkey list, what's solid settings? It should be right by solid. Or maybe it's not by solid. Where's your hotkey list? I lied. Modify, no, it's not there. Control Shift Y, sorry. Yep, just go back there. There you go. Control Shift Y will let you edit the solid colors. So I'm just making the top one lighter and the bottom one darker. Okay, just so I have some variation there. Sometimes you'll even have like maybe all of them are the same color, but you have like a drop shadow on the top and the bottom one, and basically it makes it look like that middle one is kind of inset some, right? Just like you would in Photoshop or something. Just change the bottom one just so you can see where the edges are. You can always change it back if you need to. Okay. So then I'm just going to create some text. If you look at the drawing here, I have a spot for the name, my name, the class number, and then this would be the assignment number, and then the assignment name would be in that spot. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my text tool and type in Sean Sarcona. It doesn't matter what font, as long as it's readable. Yep, you can go to the text tool up here. You can hit Control T to get to the text tool. You have to click off and then click back on it. Yeah, just a regular text tool. Did you click on your canvas and start typing? All right. So wherever you're at, you can just continue moving on. So what we need to do is this is our basic layout. So how do we want to animate these things coming out? What should animate first, the text or the background? The background. The background should animate first because if we were to not have the backgrounds here, then it would just be the text on this boring black background, and that's ugly. Okay? So we want the backgrounds to come in first. How do we want to animate them? Right, that's awesome. I like that way. Okay, so what are we gonna, what property are we gonna animate? What properties do we have to pick from? Position, scale, opacity, rotate, or anchor point. Those are typically the 5 that we're gonna play with. And not even really anchor point. So, they're down to 4. What was that? Not rotation. So we're down to 3. Keep going. Position, right? The position is the easiest one to do. And this is one that's, it's one of those that could be a position or scale type thing. Think about, and you may have to kind of visualize this in your brain some, instead of these being just like strips of layers, imagine that it's a full-blown layer like this, okay? And all we're doing is seeing part of it. So it could pop up like this, or it could scale up like that, right? So where it's coming up, there's no difference in that. If we had a picture on it though, would we see a picture scaling? Like would you see the picture distorting or moving, or would it just be like a regular picture? If you're in Photoshop and you went to the transform tool and you moved a picture, does it distort it? If you just moved it? No. What about if you scale it? Yes. Same thing in After Effects, okay? So if you scale something, it's going to distort it. If you don't scale it, it won't distort it. So position is the one we're going to go with, all right? So is this our end position or our start position for these? End. Okay. So how long should it take for them to come up? A second. Let's go with that, right? If it's wrong, we'll move it. We'll adjust. That's the best thing about animation. That's the thing about anything digital. If we mess up, we can undo it or fix it, right? If you draw something on paper, it's a lot harder to do. So let's go to 1 second in our timeline. About. Don't get it exactly at 1 second. As long as you move that ticker over and it's roughly at 1 second, you're good. Okay? There's only a few times where we may have to be like dead on, like right at 1 second. Cool. How do we access position? P. How do we tell After Effects we want to animate position? Sir.
We click on the little stopwatch.
Click on the stopwatch. Yep. So click the stopwatch. If you had all three of them selected, like I did, and then you hit P, it opened the position for all three of them. And then when you click the stopwatch, what did it do? All three of them got keyframed, right? So just keep that in mind. If you don't like doing things this over and over and over again, to try to, bunch things together. All right. So we have our end position here at 1 second. And then where's our start position going to be? No, where's our start time? Where's our start time going to be? There at 0. Right? Our animation should start here at 0 and then go to there. So we move this ticker to 0. And then we just move each one of these off screen. Right? So let's just move each one, hold shift, drag it down. Yep. All right, so you can see a difference here in how this kind of like accordions out, right? Like that. There's definitely a difference than if we had it like this, right? Because that just feels like basically it's like one block just kind of coming up, right? Can I hit Control? I can't redo it. I didn't think so. All right, let me just fix this back here, and then fix that back there. Okay. So now we have all three of these stacked. We're going to go to the end of the animation for it. And what we want to do is the effect looks a lot better. Number one, we need to change the speed, so we'll change that. But the effect looks a lot better if we do have like one come up, then one come up, then one come up, as opposed to right now, it's just kind of like that. Like all three are kind of expanding at the same time or growing at the same time. So first, let's adjust our keyframes. Do we think that this is a good enough speed? Okay, so what should we do then? What's our next step? Easy ease, right? Just think of Straight Outta Compton, right? Okay, so we have easy ease on here. How's that? I right click and then do that. You can just hit F9 because I can't hit F9 because my recording software stole that hotkey from me. Make sure you grab the keyframes and then hit F9. If you don't have the keyframe selected, it doesn't know what to easy ease. Nope. Yep, all those. Just marquee them. Yep. So click and drag from here down to the bottom. There you go, all the way down. There you go. Then hit F9. Okay, so that's definitely quicker. No, F9 on top. Maybe. Okay, so how does that? Any more adjustment? What should we do? What's that? No, not yet. We're still on just that background.
We have to make adjust the speed.
Right? So how do we make the speed adjusted? What's the other area we can go into? The graph, right? So click on the graph editor right there. You will see a red and green because your graph is set to the value graph. If you right click in your graph and you change it to the speed graph, then you'll see something that looks like mine, which is kind of like a Star Trek-y symbol. Yep. Okay. If you only have one selected, it'll only show one. Speed. Do you want the speed at the start of the animation as it's coming up, or do you want the speed at the end of the animation at the top? That's what I think would look cool, right? So it's kind of slow, and then it goes like this, like, woof, and that way the next one, woof, and the next one, woof. So it kind of like pushes the next one up. So we're going to push our graphs over to that side, over to the right side. So I'm going to grab this and then just drag it over. If you marquee, you can grab all three at the same time. Just clicking and drag around each one of those. All right, looking at this, you can see how fast all these go up. So I pushed both handlebars over to the right. You don't have to go all the way to the right. You don't have to go all the way to the left. You don't have to, in some cases, you don't have to edit the graph at all. Sometimes a simple easy ease is enough, okay? You have to use your eye to see what's going to work. The only way you're going to figure out what looks good is to, number one, look at as much animation as you can and really study it, okay? So when you watch an animation, something on TV, a commercial, watch how things are moving in and out of the screen. And then number two, just try stuff out. I actually don't like this is like maybe too much. It might look better once we, offset them. But I think I want to maybe pull this handlebar. Oops. Come on, grab that. No, you can leave yours where it is. There. Okay, so I just offset the handlebar a little bit. That way it's still faster on the right side, but not as fast. Like it felt like it maybe too fast. Okay. So now that we have that happening, I switch back out of the graph. Okay, so you can click off your graph editor. Same button gets you in, same button gets you out. You may have to use the little triangle at the bottom here to zoom back out. So click your graph to get out of that, and then use the slider at the bottom to zoom if you're not zoomed all the way out. And then what I want to do is, looking at the order of these, 3, 1, 2, that's how mine are set up. This is my bottom one, this is my second one, this is my third one. I want to make sure that this one comes out first, then this one comes out, then that one comes out. So how do I take this animation and move that animation? For number 2, how do I slide that animation over? It's number 1, but it's like the second one in my list. Just how mine laid out. Right, so like this, and then just slide that over. Right? And then the same thing here, just slide that bar over. Just sliding the whole bar over to the right. Well, you have to make sure that you're in the timeline, meaning you don't have the graph anymore. So if you're in the graph, you can't do it. So you click the graph, make sure you're zoomed out, and then you can slide that over. It looks weird, right? What looks weird about it? The layers are off, meaning though, a little more description, the layers are stacked wrong, right? So what should be our topmost layer? The bottom one. And what should be our bottom layer? The top one, right? So all we have to do is move the layers physically, just like grab layer, whatever's on top, and then just change the order. Right? And then we should get more of that. I call it the Batman effect. If you are old as me, Batman 2, his car did this like thing, or maybe Batman 3, I don't know. All right, so here's where we are currently at, is they do, right? Cool. So if we wanted to change the speed further at this point, what could we do? Let's say it's just too slow. This is already at 2 seconds, and we have no titles out. So we definitely need to speed this up because we got titles that still have to come out, display for 2 seconds, and then still go away. So how do we make this whole thing faster? The graphs as much as we can do in there. Correct, right? So we have, these are our start keyframes. Typically we don't want to touch those. These are the end ones though. If I push those that way, is it going to go faster or slower? Faster, right? If we had a whole bunch of stuff, I may go back a step where everything is lined up perfect, marquee all the keyframes, nudge them over, and then re-offset them. Sometimes I'll do that. This one is pretty simple where I can still marquee all 3 and then just literally squish it over like that. I still need to adjust the spacing here though. Okay, so squish your keyframes closer together. You just move them. Just grab these and then just move them closer to the other ones. And you can do them one at a time if you're not comfortable like grabbing all 3 at the same time. They just have to be closer. The closer they are, the faster they're going to move. You also want to keep in mind the spacing between each one of these. You don't want it to be like crazy far off from one another. Which one of these moves the fastest? This one or this one? This one moves the fastest? Look on here, which one's going to move the fastest? This one moves the fastest? Which one has to travel the furthest? The top one. So which one's going to travel the fastest? The top one, okay. So our spacing between keyframes, it might make sense to take the bottom one, which doesn't have a whole lot farther to go. Like the bottom one's movement, I like. You can feel the movement of it coming up and hitting. The next 2, it just like, they feel like they're like already on top of the screen. They just pop into place. So what I may want to do is maybe nudge this one a little bit closer, spread that one a little bit further, and then spread this one a little bit further. And so it feels more like it's actually coming up and growing or moving versus doing what it was just doing, okay? So I just changed the spacing between these keyframes for the bottom one are closer. These ones are further apart. These ones are the furthest apart. A lot of it is going to be just like, does it look good? Let me try something else. Let me see if I can figure out another way to do it. This was one way that we animated this. I'm going to just duplicate this composition just so you can see. I could have also animated it like this. Oops, wrong order, sorry. That one, this one. There we go. Right? That works too. That's the same exact thing, except it's the opposite order, right? Instead of starting at the bottom and going up, we start at the top and went down. We could also add a little bit of softness to that, so that as they come up, maybe they kind of come up and then float in place and then like lock into place. That's another possibility that we could have happen. The possibilities are endless, so you really have to expose yourself to a lot of different material to see what it is you like, what it is you don't like, what works, what doesn't, what can you do, and basically start creating a journal or a YouTube playlist of just all the cool stuff that you can find out there, because that's the only way you're going to find out. You'll definitely not get everything you need just by sitting here watching, these things. All right, cool. So we animated that. Again, we can keep tweaking it, whatever. How are we going to animate the text now? Position, right? So how do we want to do it? We can do scale too. What if we do position for the top two and then scale for the middle one? Right, that works. Or the middle two, right, because there's two there. Actually, let's do the middle two as position and scale, and then the top two will just do position, okay? So I'm thinking the middle two, we'll have them come in and then like scale up, like they hit each other, and then come back down. That might be kind of neat. And then the top two, we don't care. It's just our name in the class. Just drop them down. So if you want to try it on your own, definitely try it. We're just going to animate the position of the names just falling down into that spot. That's all we're doing for that. Okay? When do we want that to happen? At the beginning? Right? At the end of that. Okay? I recommend doing all your animation, though, starting it from the beginning. So go to the very beginning. That's where our animation should start. And then we can just shift that line down to the end. Okay, so I'm going to go to the position for MACA 1900 and my name. They're already in the end position, so that's why I jumped to like 14 frames or 12 frames. I don't know what I'm at here, 12 frames. So I jumped to 12 frames. That's where I'm going to hit my stopwatch. Okay, so I hit P for position on those. Yeah, about 12. Yep, and then I'm going to go back to the beginning and then just move them up. Went back to the beginning of the timeline and then just moved them straight up out of there. Okay, every time you do any kind of animation, those are going to be your steps. You set the time you want to start animating something. You click the stopwatch for whatever it is you're animating. Change your time, change the value. Once you've done all your keyframes, then you can easy ease them. Then you go in the graph editor. Every time, okay? So we just set 2 keyframes. So what's our next step? Easy ease. Remember, you can hit function 9. Make sure you have it selected. They should turn into little hourglasses. Okay. Yep. So I do them both at the same time, right? So I just grabbed all 4 of these keyframes and then hit F9 or right click easy ease. And then what do? Graph editor. And then see which way you like better. Maybe you want speed at the beginning, speed at the end. For something like my name, I'm going to do speed at the end, or at the beginning. Yep, so you're going to move it to the left. And the reason for that is my name will be on screen longer and kind of slower, and so it's easier for people to read versus it just kind of being thrown in there. Correct. By this weekend, you should start having dreams about the graph editor and about setting keyframes. If you're not working hard enough. Cool, we have easy ease, graph editor, success. Cool. So our names come in, they're good. So now I'm just going to offset them. I'm just going to take Sean Sarcona and just move that whole layer. I noticed a couple people doing this, so just pay attention to it so you don't do it. If I click in the middle of this bar and drag it, it takes everything in that bar and moves it with it. If I grab at the beginning of the bar and drag it, it's only going to cut that layer. So see how the keyframes don't go with it? So it's basically just going to chop it. You don't want that. I want to physically move the layer down to where I want that to come in, and the same thing with 1900. Move where I want that to come in. Boom, boom, boom. Where should we move it to? Oh. Where is it going to look good? We don't know, do we? So next class, I won't go over it this class, but next class we'll talk about how to time things out so it makes more sense. Because right now, a lot of this is guessing. The speed of these things popping in, the speed of our name coming in, the speed of everything else, it's very off. How many of you listen to music? Everyone should raise their hand because music is pretty awesome, okay? In music, what is the thing that's underlying all music? Rhythm, right? There's a beat to it. So whenever we animate something, we want to kind of encapsulate some kind of rhythm or some kind of beat to our stuff. So next time when we come in and you're actually going to work on yours, I'll show you an easy way to kind of get that underlying rhythm there so you know, like, this is where stuff should come in, okay? For now, we're just kind of still monkeying around with it. Cool. So just kind of find a spot for it, okay? That's the idea. You want it to come in after this one, obviously, so we can see it. We don't want to compete with other things. The viewer's eye is what we're trying to guide here, right? So someone watching this, they see this, 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 oh, and then here come the names, right? So we have to make sure that it's timed out good. You will be a good judge of that, as the people around you will too. So when I'm lining something up, let me just ignore the 1900 for a second, okay? I'm just going to focus on my name. If I pull it here, like that's really far off, and I'll make this bigger so you can really see it. And I'll set this to fit. Control 0 doesn't fit, whatever. All right, so it goes doot, 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 doot. Like that's like really far off. And by the time that happened, the viewer's eye is starting to wander, like, where else am I supposed to be looking? Because something's, I'm sure, is going to be happening. So what I'm doing here is it goes doot, doot, doot. Bump. See? Okay, so there's a kind of like rhythm to how that's coming, and it makes everything kind of make sense. If I move it over 2 frames, I'll move it over 3 frames. All right, that might have been a little bit quick. Like that one's way too quick, because the second it hits, the other one comes down. And so the viewer whose eye just got to the top, now they have to like look down. Okay? So So I'll move that over. I'll move 1900 over. Where'd 1900 go? Oh, I turned the eyeball off. There we go. Perfect. Okay? So the eye went up. The names came down. Now we're ready for title card. Sir. Yes. All right. Next thing we're going to do, title card, right? So, title card here. Where should our pivots be for this? Did you follow what I meant by having them come in and then scale together? Like they're squishing? Okay. So where should their pivots be? The corners? Right where they're going to touch, right? That way as they scale, they'll scale inward and upward. So on 0, 1, what key am I going to hit to change the pivot? Y. A gets you to the anchor point that lets us do this, but it moves it. I don't want to move it. Y lets me actually just pick it up and move the anchor point wherever I want. So I'm just going to double check that the title card's anchor point is in one corner, and then the 0, 1 pivot is also in that same corner. It was already there, right. When you do the title card one, it should already be in that bottom left corner. but the same corner, right? So we want them both to be on that same side. We want them both in the center. So this one's pivot is right here, and then the 0, 1s was right next to it. Okay. Some things we need to be concerned about before we move on to that next step. So like anchor point, the anchor point needs to be in the right spot before I start animating the position, because that will define where the position is. Okay. So the pivot for the title card is right here. The pivot for 0, 1 is right there. Okay. And then all I did was animate the position of them coming together. Yeah, you can marquee at the end and then scoot it over. And then I'm also marking the beginning and scooting that over too. Because I really want a lot of speed on this side. So I drug around here and then just pull the handles over. You can also click and then just drag the handles either way. All right, so now we need to scale. So this is the part usually people get tripped up on, because we set position keyframes. So people, typically what happens is they'll go all the way to the beginning of it and start scaling from the beginning. It shouldn't scale from the beginning. Where should it start scaling from? Right. So right about here, that's when it should start scaling. So when I hit S for scale, then I can set my first keyframe right there to scale. Yep. And then I can scoot up a little bit. Do I want to scale them uniformly? No. What do I want to do? How do I want to scale title card? Do I want to push title card in like this and then scale it up like that, right? Because that'll make it look kind of like squishy, right? So that's what I want to do. So I'll unchain these and then squeeze them in like that and then squeeze them up like that. So I unchained it, scaled it in the X direction to squish, scaled it in the Y direction to stretch. Yeah. All right. So now here is where we're starting to sync things up to time where it really, really matters. The names dropping, there's a gray area where we can kind of get that name in there and it works pretty good. Here, it should flow fluidly as the title and the 0, 1 kind of come together, that these things should feel like they're like stretching up, right? So just like before, I'm still going to do my easy ease. And how did I get, oh, right there. And I'm going right on the scales, yep. And then going to the graph editor. And then my speed for this should be at the start of it, right? Because that's where the two items are coming together very fast. So they're going to stretch up very fast, and then they're going to slowly relax. Well, we have two values, right? We have X and Y. So now we're going to see a red and a green. So it's the same exact thing. You just grab the stuff and squish it over to one side. Yep. Like that. It should be both. You should have one up and one down. You could really get into creating some kind of like jiggly stuff, right? So it comes in and it bounces up, and then it hangs out for a second, then it comes out and goes, and then like settles itself, depending on how long you want. We're not going to go into that much detail, but the next step would be just to make it then go back to where it was, right? So we just go back after this, and then we just reset these back to where they were. Mine were 100. Yours might have been something else if you would have scaled it up to something else. Well, you can go back to your first keyframe and look at them. All right, so that's the gist of how we would do something like a title card. Obviously, the next step in this would be to get everything to go away. It's essentially the same thing, just trying to figure out how we then want everything to fall apart, okay? So I'm not going to go over that today. Next time when you come in, you're going to make a new composition, and then you can start on your animation stuff. You will run into trouble about the halfway mark. We'll go through, we'll see some other animation techniques, and some other stuff that we'll be playing with, okay? But I want you guys to really be able to get into it and start playing with the stuff next class. So make sure that you have your sketches, which I didn't get a chance to check today, but I will check them on Wednesday. So bring your sketches with you on Wednesday. And then make sure you have something that you have an idea for what you want to do. Now that you've seen a couple examples, that should even further give you a better idea of how complicated something like just a squash could be. So if your vision was to make like an explosion and fireworks and all this stuff, you kind of toned it back down or right-sized it for where we're at in the semester. Okay? Questions? Yes, ma'am. For now, yes. Sir.
So for next time, you wanted us to have like a new title card for Wednesday?
No. When you come in Wednesday, you'll start working on a title card. What you should have are some sketches that you've been working on. That's what you're going to use as your reference.
Would like us to work on another sketch.
Yep, still work on the same thing, those title cards. Okay, just different layouts. Yep.
So you want us to save this one?
Yeah. So save this. Make sure you back up your folder before you go. I'll have this up on Canvas